evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening, an evening with myself, Minister Simone Key, and I've got the pleasure of interviewing Minister Simon James this evening, and really looking forward to this evening. Recalling old memories and listening to some. I haven't seen Simon for a while, so it'd be nice to catch up as well. So, if in the meantime, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, if you don't mind leaving that until the end of this session, and then I can address the questions at the end. All right, thank you. So, may I extend a very warm welcome to Simon, and ask you, the very first question really is, first of all, how are you?
I'm absolutely average. Thank you, Simone, for asking. Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, nothing much changed then.
Same as ever. Yeah.
Right. And I want to ask you, if you don't mind, like I ask everybody else, but how did you come into spiritualism? We really are interested in your story.
I think it's probably a different story to a lot of people. I hadn't lost anyone. I'd lost grandparents when I was younger, but it was primarily curiosity. And I back then, obviously, the internet didn't exist, and so the only way of finding out about spiritualism or anything like that was the local library, and the local newspaper advertised Wolverhampton Spiritualist Church services on a Monday afternoon and Sunday evening, and a few other things. And so I actually plucked up courage when I was 17, I think, just 16, 17, and went to Wolverhampton Church on a Monday afternoon while I was at college. And I walked in the doors and sort of, in a manner of speaking, never walked back out again. So so that was really why I came into spiritualism, because I was searching really for a spiritual connection. I wasn't looking to hear from anybody who had died, because I didn't really know that many at that time. And so I was really looking for a spiritual experience, looking for God, if you will, in if you want to call it that. But certainly it was a spiritual pathway I was searching for, and that's what brought me here.
So I really wanted to ask you as well about your work, your work with spirit, and what areas of your work do you enjoy the most? What is it that gives you the buzz?
I think that's a really good question, because that's changed over time. Because I mean, when we first come into this, and obviously Simone and I go back a long time, which we won't mention how long, but we go back a long time. When you first begin, there's this eagerness to demonstrate or be constantly in contact with the spirit, in that sense. And you certainly see that today with students. There's that eagerness, which is a phase which people go through, which is necessary.
Yeah.
But I think as you gain maturity in your work and in your mediumship, that passes. And certainly for me, the enthusiasm and my passion is more about people's development. And I'm not even talking about development for platform or anything like that, but I'm just interested in seeing people become themselves. I think one of the great difficulties that we have in spiritualism today, and it doesn't matter whether you're a spiritualist or not, but spiritualism, sadly, perhaps the only religious tradition where when you meet somebody for the first time, they ask you, what do you do? Not who you are, but what do you do? Are you a medium? Are you a healer? Are you this?
Okay.
Which I think is ridiculous. And what I enjoy more than anything else is encouraging people to be themselves as hard as they possibly can be. so that their mediumship, the mediumistic experience, can take them to become who they are. Now, that may mean that they never ever walk on a platform or never even do anything other than find some piece of mind or contentment, or at least they're able to be who they are. Because that to me is what mediumship is all about. And so for me, my passion has changed over the years, where I'm much more interested in encouraging that person to find that mediumistic experience, so that it brings them into being who they need to be, as opposed to getting up on a platform or whatever that, I mean, that may be the case, and that's fine, but that's going to be always for a minority of people, not a majority. So I think I'd say people.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, because in fact, today I had a young girl contact me who just felt that she wanted to do something with the spirit world, didn't know much about it, you know, in a practical way, but she just wanted to explore the spirit. But she said, I'm looking for a new career. And I had to then say, hang on a minute, you need to enjoy this and you need to understand it. And if you're looking at it from the career point of view, you will miss the experience of it.
Absolutely.
You know, and it saddened me when I heard that, because it's like, okay, well, I don't want to do my job. I want to do something else that's perhaps easier. And people have no idea how difficult this work is.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm assuming people don't join the Catholic Church or choose to become a Buddhist in order for a career change.
For a career change.
So why should this be any different? You know. You know, but again, it's the public perception of what we do, that it's you know, it's just another career or another pathway, you know.
Yeah, and I find it, you know, that in lots of ways we've been misled. I have to say that, you know, we have been misled in the past into believing that it was, you know, the public eye that matters. And I personally think, if I have any good work at all, it's always behind closed doors. It's never in the public.
Oh,
you know, yeah.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I think one of the most ridiculous phrases that's used and still used in mediumship is, "You're only as good as your last demonstration or your last service." You know, that's okay if you're in a theatre.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
again,
you're acting.
You know, exactly, if you're acting, absolutely. But I'll again use the example of the say, for instance, people go to the Dalai Lama and he's doing a talk or doing something about the, you know, a long life mantra. I'm sure they don't go up to him and say, you know, you were better last week. You know,
or can I have your notes? You
absolutely,
know?
Exactly. Or the Pope is doing Urbi et Orbi, and they go, well, actually, last Christmas I thought you were really good, but I think you dropped the standard this year, Holy Father. So this business of, when anybody says to you know, an aspiring worker that you're only as good as your last demonstration, well, then automatically you're paying attention to the congregation or the audience, and it's been turned into a show.
Yeah,
it's not a show; it's an experience, and we need to pull the power back from this whole basically three-ring circus that public mediumship has become, sadly.
Yeah, you're so right, and I feel it's sad that people feel they have to be on a platform to prove their own identity, to get some form of recognition, you know. And I mean, I actually feel that I was put on a platform far too early. It was the usual story, you know, the medium hadn't turned up in the church service and the donkey me had. And so I was the one that was going to do the service. And I was so terrified. Now, I don't mean scared. I was petrified. I should never have been in that position. I should never have been put in that position. And that's why I feel very strongly about people, because there's a part of me when people are put, you know, when you say, does anyone anyone wanting to work on publicly, and you've got all these hands going up, there's a part of me that thinks, what kind of masochist are you? You know, because it is, you know, sometimes to put yourself through that if you haven't got that personality,
Mhm.
you know, and we should be, as you say, we should be nurturing the personality of the individual.
I mean,
Just the product.
I completely agree, because, you know, one of the things is that, and again, within mediumship, there is this pinnacle, supposed pinnacle, that the platform mediumship is the be all and end all. If you're not,
Yeah,
if you're not
yeah.
if you're not a demonstrating medium, you've not made it, or you're not there.
No,
And
you've
that's
not made it.
absolutely wrong. You know, and also when you see these teaching mediums, they go, well, if you're, you know, if you're not on the platform, you're letting the spirit world down.
Wow.
Really? So you want to work for a world that works on guilt? Um, I don't think so. That other world of consciousness does not operate on a guilt trip, and neither does it work on a barter system. That if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. And also, what people forget, and you know, we've both seen this over the years, Simone, is that yes, you may end up working on a platform, but that doesn't mean to say you're going to work there forever. Perhaps the spirit may take you there to give you that experience and then take you off again. But that is not, you've not moved into a lesser stage, you've just moved into a greater experience of your mediumship. But what we have to ask ourselves is what is the draw to be on the platform? Is it to be seen, or is it to give an experience of the spirit? Because there is a need there. If it's to be seen, then find some other experience.
Find another way of working where you can be seen, because there's no room on our platform for that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm, you know, in the era that we both came into the movement, there was a lot of competition in those days. I'm so glad, because I don't see that so much now, but there was such a lot of competition, you know. And you know, we've both been there when we've worked with teams of people at the Arthur Finney College, and thought, oh grief, I hope I'm okay, because not because we could be letting the spirit world down, but because we could be letting those other people down, which is shameful.
Absolutely.
That we felt like that. But that was how we were meant to feel in those days.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I think one of the things is the certainly, and I think it's not always addressed, but I think we have to also be able to have adult conversations about working as public mediums, because there is often a toxicity within working in teams, particularly with individuals who they need to be seen and need to be heard more than anyone else. And the competitive edge, again, I think is rife, or certainly has been rife within mediumship, which again is toxic for the development of any of the younger mediums, and I'm talking younger as in development, not necessarily physical age, because it undermines the confidence and just the own self-esteem of the individual working. And again, that's very, very toxic, because what you then create is a bunch of fragile individuals and fragile mediums, which we've seen countless times, you know, countless times. And it is that fragility of sensitivity within the medium, which obviously is heightened, and which certain individuals who are dealing with their own stuff can quite happily play upon. And so that has no room in the work that we do, you know. Absolutely.
No. I think I feel that there's a part of me that wants us to start all over again. You know, that's how I feel, because we've obviously learned the hard way, if you like, you know, because we come to this point where we look back and think, hang on a minute, that's not right, you know. But every system has to be developed. I appreciate that. But when we look at the individual and we see that need for them to become somebody, that scares me, you know, where they can't be themselves. They've got to adapt to something else or become something else, because it's the only way they will be able to be identified as such, you know, and that's scary.
Absolutely, because I mean, at the end of the day, you know, on your deathbed, if you're lucky enough to be conscious, you're not going to be thinking about your demonstration. Because if you are, you've led a really sad life,
Yeah.
and a really empty one. You know, if that's what you're remembering, or my demonstration last year was really quite poor.
Yeah. Or even if you've got to turn to somebody and say, I was good, wasn't I? You know, I mean, that's even sadder.
Exactly. You know, and I think the thing is that, you know, because I'll guarantee nobody on this, in this platform here, will be remembered after we're gone for what we did, apart from those people that care about us.
Yeah.
And that's as it should be.
Yeah.
And a medium's job is ultimately to be forgotten.
Mm.
It is the message that is to be remembered.
It's important. That's what's important.
Not the messenger.
Yeah.
It is the, and this is the problem. You know, like the Arthur Findlay College, for instance, people come in and they see the picture of Gordon Higginson in the library. You know, and we've been there together, and now people have come up and say, "Is that Arthur Findlay?" And
yeah,
no, it's Gordon Higginson. And why should he be remembered? Meaning, from people who've walked in from the street and they don't know the history, why would we automatically be remembered? And that's the thing. Obviously, I remember him, and
but you knew him, you know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
He was my teacher, so I do, of course, I honour him, and very, very grateful to have been a student of his.
Yeah.
But at the same time, all of us will be forgotten. So if we are going to spend the rest of our lives thinking that our public mediumship is the be all and end all of our life, then we really need to go out and get a life. Because ultimately, mediumship is about enhancing your life. It's not in place of having a life. It is life.
And I also think that mediumship is a reflection of your life as well, our lives as well. You know, so our experiences in life help us with our mediumship. It's not the other way around. You know, we have to live first, because that's what we're on this earth to do. You know, so
exactly. I mean, you know, well, been there lots of times when I've said this. You know, there's no point talking to dead people if you can't talk to the living ones.
No.
You know, what's the point?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few people who, when they get to the spirit world, they may be told they spent more time talking to the dead than they did the living. You know,
and the thing is
that's very sad. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, the whole point of communication with the so-called spirit world is ultimately to remind us to live. That's the point.
Every time.
Yeah. Story, you know, and if you're not living, there's no point to this.
But how do you feel? My thoughts at the moment, you know, how we always get our own concepts at certain times of our lives, and at the moment, this is one of mine, is about, you know, if I were to start in my development again, or if I was to train, you know, in a different scenario, I think I would now start to suggest that people do everything they do from a healing perspective. I feel that's the start and the end to it. You know, if we work with healing and in very many different forms, but if everything starts from that word healing, then we're going to get it right or better than we've ever done before. So every word that's said is spoken from the healing perspective. Every act is done from that perspective. And that tells me that life will be much, there's more to do, there's more to reach. And it isn't about becoming anyone, but understanding everything. That's really where I'm at, you know.
Well, I agree very much so with that, because, you know, there's a lot of people come into mediumship who are broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they then move into a place where they think their mediumship will heal them. And it does. It tries to do, well, it certainly attempts to do that. So it tries to bring you into a place where you've got to face your stuff and face your demons. And But a lot of people then what they do is palm that off on other people, so that actually they deflect their healing. So they're never in a place of healing. And ultimately, mediumship is constantly trying to bring you into a place of your own being, so that you are who you are as hard as you possibly can be. And really, if we were going to really start all over again, I agree, Simone, that I would, well, and again, this is going to be a controversial comment for a lot of people, but I would ban demonstrations completely, and just have them as experiences that are done at certain times by people who, if you will, understand the practice, understand the point of it. And actually, there's a point to it, that there wasn't a demonstration every night where a platform has to be filled by somebody who's not necessarily capable of providing that healing experience, but just happens to be there because the medium hasn't turned up.
You know, that's happened to me.
And so we actually train mediums for the need of this world. So we actually train people who their mediumship will bring them into a one-to-one. It may actually bring them into a public place where a demonstration can be given at a certain time, at a certain point. And so to me, what I would be looking to, if we started all over again, is to recognize, well, first of all, what is the point of what we're doing? What is the point of the service in what we're doing, and how best can we bring the people who have that spark within them into a place to provide healing, whether that be on a public platform, whether that be in a private one-to-one, whether that be healing in the sense of the healing touch, or through the voice. Because to me, mediumship is mediumship, whether it's on
absolutely
evidential system or whether it's a healing or spoken. You know, but that's what I would do, because I think we would then be able, we'd see less broken people, or broken people that knew they were broken and were wanted to do something about it, rather than using this as some form of spiritual band-aid.
It's very, I understand exactly where you're coming from, because I think, you know, when we've been involved in this movement a long time, and we've come through many different phases of it, and we've seen the good and the not so good because of it. And I personally would love to protect people from the not so good in my religion that I've seen. And it all really starts and ends with the ego, in my opinion, you know, for what that means. And about this, again, this need for people to find their identity through fame and fortune, whatever that means, you know, in this work. And, you know, we both had, I know that I can speak for both of us because we've been through quite a lot together. And I know there's been so many times when students have come up to us and said, you know, come on, you know, give us a shortcut, you know, give me the manual. You know, they think that we can just present a book to them when we've got the A to Z of mediumship in that book, and they're not prepared to take the time, because there is no shortcut with this work. There's no shortcut, but yet they're expecting us to hand them the book that tells them what mediumship is all about, you know. And once we get across the idea that it's experiential and not theoretical, then we'll have somewhere. So I think both of us realize that there's good and bad in it, but we've got to try and find a way of enhancing the good to help other people see the point, the purpose of what we do. So moving on from that, and thinking, because we both met at the Arthur Findlay College some many years ago, and when we look back, and I remember you know, in your very first week of Spirit of Youth in those days, you know, and when I look back on that and I think how far we've come in that, you know, how do you feel about those days now?
Well, it's funny because Simone just talking about Spirit of Youth, which is an organization I began back in '94 to basically address the problems that I saw then in spiritualism, in that there weren't many young people. No. It sort of descended into this sort of moribund, almost fossilized way of doing things. old hymns, this is the way we do it, and all the rest of it. And so I set up Spirit of Youth in '94 as an organisation, then I had the week at the Art Finding Colleges as course organiser, which Simone worked on for many years, the Spirit of Youth. Now I was young then, now it's the spirit of middle age, but that's okay. But I think it was interesting because looking back then, the things that what I tried to do with Spirit of Youth was, and this is the interesting thing, is because whenever you try something new, you create something new, human nature wants to go, yeah, that's really good if you're lucky, and then make it into the new normal. And I remember with Spirit of Youth, I created a set of principles that were not new principles, but basically an interpretation of the 7 principles. So the fatherhood of God, I called the power. Brotherhood of man, harmony is in. Communion of spirits and ministry of angels was the dead speak, let's talk, and so on and so on. And they don't sound particularly stunning today, but certainly at the time, that it was radical. And the interesting thing is that I remember people going, well, you've created new 7 principles. I said, no. I said, all I've done, I'm trying to interpret them. And the whole point was to interpret them so that actually people began to interpret them for themselves, as opposed to, because back then, very few people even read them, never mind anything else. And I remember many years later, after I'd moved on from Spirit of Youth, I gave it up after 5 years because I felt I'd taken it as far as I could. Was that, people were calling these the Spirit of Youth principles. And I said, you've completely missed the point. They weren't supposed to stay. They were supposed to make you think, so you would write them in your own language. So you'd use them, not become something new normal, because otherwise that's just Simon James's opinion, which that wasn't the point of it, But human beings love to be fixed in their ideas. It's once we've got something new, let's fix it and make it just normal, But I think one of the things I was pleased about doing back then was when Brian Robertson and myself created Talking Heads, where we actually created, which I know the college is using, and I know people on SNUi I've used, but Brian and I created Talking Heads, where basically we'd bounce off one another from a teaching point and a philosophical point to break up and get people to think. Because again, one of the things is I think one of the sad things I noticed then, and it's still today, because I've been in the UK for a number of reasons for the last 12 months, even though I live in Canada. And yet I've noticed what it was like back in the 1990s when I started Spirit of Youth. There hasn't been a great deal of change now. There's still the same, working with students to work with their philosophical experience. Back then I tried to create something new to make people think, and really spiritualism has the possibility of encouraging people to use their brain as well as their heart, and what I got tired of, and I know Simone will agree with me, is, and it wasn't their fault, it's just because where people are what they're expected. But if you've got somebody in a congregation who's either lost somebody, declared bankruptcy, they've lost their house, had just been given a terminal illness, it's not going to help them by somebody standing on a public platform and doing some kind of philosophy by saying, well, the clouds will part and the sun will shine, and if you will just trust, everything will get better. That's not good enough. No. That's just not good enough. We should be able to provide an experience that is both safe, nurturing, and also something that people can hold on to help them move forward, to think till things do get better for them.
But surely that is about meeting the needs of today, isn't it? And hopefully our religion is a current religion. And that should be one of the main principles, if you pardon the expression, that we should be following through, about meeting the needs of today and not shying away from those situations with people.
Well, exactly. And again, at the risk of offending anybody on here, but you know, you see so much, and particularly on social media, where people are posting what their guides have said. Well, who cares? Who cares? Who cares what they think? What I care is what you think. What do you think? Because there's no point keep asking somebody over there to give you your strength, your brains, because if you can't think for yourself, then you're telling yourself that you're stupid.
But isn't that relinquishing responsibility, though, by putting it all on the spirit? Because the spirit is going to do all this for me, like it's a magic potion, you know, and I don't have to put myself out. And going back to what you were saying about the spirit of youth, you know, changing principles in terms of, you know, interpretation, I still remember the fifth principle, which was the buck stops with you, you know, and I think that should be rammed home more, you know, because when we just say the words personal responsibility, that doesn't mean anything, you know, but we need to, that's the point. And I feel that today people are too, not everybody, of course, but a few people are so willing to relinquish responsibility for themselves that it's all to do with the spirit. Everything comes from the spirit, and they don't take the responsibility that they have a working brain too.
Oh, absolutely. I just think it's so sad because
me too.
You know, I find, you know, well, you've been there many times as well, Simone, where people will come up and they'll have drawn a piece of art, or they'll have created a poem, and they say, my guide did this.
Oh God.
You know, and what I find sad about that is so you have no creative ability whatsoever. You have no ability to be inspired, and I find that so sad, because what that then does is rob that person of their ability. You know, because each one of us, I'll use this as an example. You know, many years ago I was working overseas, and somebody said, oh, I mean, someone knows, and a few of you know me, you know, we like having a laugh. I've got a decent sense of humor, you know. That's why I look like this, you know. So, you know, I like making people laugh. And somebody said, oh, well, you know, why you make people laugh is because you've got a clown as a guide.
Oh,
and I said, oh, good grief, I hope not, because I don't like clowns. I don't find them funny in the slightest. And what that also does is saying is, so I don't have the ability to say something funny. I need a disembodied sense of humor that happens to be floating around to make me funny. And, you know, in certain parts of the world, they talk about, you know, they have a guide that brings joy. Well, if that's the case, then you must also have a guide that brings depression, or melancholy. Yeah. Because if you're going to have balance, you've got to have the lot. This is the thing about responsibility, because we have the responsibility, we have the power to change, and that's not taken away from any kind of communication from the other world, from inspiration sources, not whatsoever. I'm not talking about that. But what I'm talking about is that as soon as we say that my guide does this or my guide does that, we immediately disempower ourselves.
And devalue.
Absolutely devalue.
You know, I mean, I know, and I know I can't. I'm preaching to the converted, if you pardon the expression. But we've both been given books by people, and I've been given countless books over the years, and I know you have as well. And then people come up and they'll say, "This one's nothing to do with spirit. This is all about me." And then another person will come up and say, "This is nothing to do with me. This is all about spirit." And I'm going, "How do you know? How do you know that you're not open to the spirit while you're writing? Or how do you know that you're not involved? You know, because it's part of us. So how can you separate that?" And it doesn't make sense to me. But the point is that they think it's not worthy if the spirit world hasn't written it, is what I meant, you know. And I find that so sad that people can't accept that they can be talented without putting that onto the spirit world. What about them in their own right?
To me, again, I mean, I think I agree that because there has to be this acknowledgement and this understanding now that the Spirit, if we believe this, that the Spirit pervades all things, we are all constantly being moved by the presence of the Spirit. And I think this, without this idea that they have to be disembodied to be of use to us, which I think is so sad, because it means that as soon as we create that disembodied, or we create separation, as soon as we create separation, we become less than. And I think it's been very, very noticeable, this particularly over the pandemic, for instance. You know, really good example. You know, here we have a worldwide pandemic that has killed, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, probably, you know, over a million by the time, or millions by the time it's all over. And the thing is that the spirit world has not come to save us. I did not see Silver Birch, Red Cloud, White Eagle, or anybody coming to save us. But what I did see is the Spirit moving doctors, nurses, care workers, those individuals that made the vaccines. You know, and I saw ordinary people doing the most remarkable things. That to me,
that's the Spirit in action, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
That's the intervention of the Spirit moving people, because we don't need the spirit world galloping in on horses to save us. That's not how it works. It's the Spirit moves with real people doing real things to make real differences in people's lives. And that's the Spirit that I follow, and that's the Spirit that I teach.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So moving on from that slightly, how do you see spiritualism in the future? How do you see it progressing? Where do you see it going? What would you like to happen to it? Or to us, should I say?
That's a difficult one.
Sorry.
No. It's a really good question. It's a difficult one, because I'll be quite honest with you. I am very worried for spiritualism, because basically, and again, I'm speaking to adults here, spiritualism itself is on life support. In its current form, it's on life support. And here there's a difference, and this is the problem, is because people equate mediumship with spiritualism. Spiritualism uses mediumship in its worship and in its understanding, in its science, in its philosophy. But it is not the only tradition that uses mediumship. And you can be a medium without being a spiritualist, as I've encountered many, many times, which is absolutely fine. But spiritualism in its current form is definitely on life support. And the only way we are going to turn that around is to actively bring spiritualism and encourage and teach spiritualism as a point of individual relationship with the Spirit, without turning people into something. And spiritualism in its own form, if you think, is really, in its current form, is a religion. Certainly in the UK, Canada, the United States, and Australia, New Zealand, a few other places, is a religion that also encourages takers without actually asking for anything back. Because, you know, people, and I'm vice president of a spiritualist sanctuary back home in Victoria, along with Brian Robertson, he's the president. And what we have tried to do at the sanctuary, and Simone's been there, what we do at the sanctuary is that we encourage a community. You know, we don't encourage a community of people who want to be on the platform. Yes, there's some people who are platform mediums. There's some people who work as healing mediums, but there's also people who work as cleaning mediums, people who work as artistic mediums, people who work as human mediums. You know, and so the only way, I think, or one of the main ways we are going to save what we believe and cherish so much, is to actually remind people that this is a community experience. And if I'm going to belong to this thing called spiritualism, not what am I going to get out of it, but what am I going to bring to it? What am I going to give to it? But in its current form, I think we're in big trouble.
I totally understand the feeling of community, because, you know, not wishing to blow my own committee's trumpet, but that's the whole point of SNUi, is about building this sense of community so that anyone anywhere in the world can feel part of something, you know, and part of that feeling of fellowship. But, you know, it comes, you know, I think, and this is just my opinion, obviously, but I think it all comes back down to the very, very beginning, the grassroots level of where we go from here has to start again. We have to start again, because like you say, if we're coming to the end of whatever we had, because every era repeats itself, and it's up to us to change it. So by looking at the individual and having a completely new concept of the development within the individual and for themselves, not in terms of mediumship and so on, I feel that, and you know, I know I sound like I'm a record, but I'm such a believer in personal development now, more so than ever before. When people come to you because they want this or they want that, and then you look at them with a completely different way, not about their mediumship or healing, but about themselves. You know, why do you want it? What is it for? You know, what do you think you're going to do with it? And that's where we've got to start. I think that's where we've got to start with our education.
Well, absolutely, because I mean, you know, in practical terms, you know, mediumship in its general, well, in its, I mean, I come from an understanding that mediumship is not just about talking to dead people. That's like
No,
1/10 of what we do. It's just a tiny bit, because actually talking to dead people is actually practically fairly useless on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's not much use. I mean, let's put it this way: if you get stranded, and I've used this example lots of times, but if you're on a boat that is sinking and you end up on a desert island, who do you want to get stranded with? A medium or a boat builder? You want to get stranded with a boat builder, not a medium. You know, if you want somebody who can actually build a boat so you can leave. That's the point. And the whole thing of this is that this elevation to talking to the dead as the pinnacle of everything that we do, again, is a misunderstanding. And until spiritualism stops asking people what do you want to be, and starts asking the question when somebody comes through our door, who are you and who do you need to be? Until we start asking those questions and actually helping that individual becoming that, then we will still be in this spiral of you coming through the front door and yes, give us 6 months and you'll be on a public platform. That will see the end of spiritualism within the next 50 years. You know, there's no two ways about it. Because also as well, there's so many mediums being produced who don't necessarily want to work in spiritualist centers.
No, that's true. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and I'm just quickly, just as given as example, you know, from the developments point of our sanctuary back home, you know, for us it's 2 years at least to become a member of the sanctuary. And we ask the individual, what can you contribute to the sanctuary? Not from a financial point of view.
No.
What can you do? What are your talents? What are you contributing? What can you bring to the community of spiritualists? And that's why we have such a close-knit community. And one of our people, and just use this as an example, you know, she lost her son. That's how she came into the sanctuary. And she had communication, she had evidence from her son that helped her move and live with her grief. I don't say get past it, but live with her grief and allow her grief to be with her. Now, what happens in a lot of centers and churches is that immediately she would have been put in a development circle to become a medium, which to me, which is crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
You don't teach somebody in grief to become a medium. It's like trying to find a gas leak with a lighted match. You know, it's just very, very unethical. But she, over the years, she came to classes and did a variety of different things. But where she found where her mediumship led her was to reawaken to her art. And so she is now, for prior pandemic, was artist in residence on a number of hotels in Victoria, and also she was doing a season in Venice as artist in residence.
Wow.
So actually her mediumship took her to find her art. And I'm not talking about spirit portraiture, I'm talking about art that's able to move people and inspire people in a very practical sense. And that to me is the spirit working.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
that is the spirit working. And is that, to me, that pathway will enable spiritualism to continue far more than the quick fix platform pathway.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you anyway, but you've just naturally led me to it, to ask you about your work in Canada. And because you've had your year at home, well, back in the UK now, and how you see the difference between the two places and within spiritualism and outside of it as well.
Well, I mean, one thing is it's been great being back here in England, because, and back in where I grew up, because I've got to experience just before lockdown, excuse me, a number of churches that I hadn't worked since nearly 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. You know, it really has. And there's some churches that are becoming quite progressive, but I think what I was struck at what I was saddened is that we're having the same discussions in many respects that we were having back 30 years ago when I began Spirit of Youth. We need more young people. We need to change the way we talk. We need to, and I found sad, because I thought, well, you know, I left this when my beard was ginger. And I've come back and now my beard is grey. You know, probably if I come back again, it'll all have fallen out by then. But that's what saddened me, because it was the same. We're having the same discussions. I mean, there's definitely chinks of light in the fact of people wanting to try new things, that we're even having discussions like this, where back in the 90s, this, you know, to even mention, I mean, when I came up with the 7 principles at that time, you know, at one point I thought I was going to be lynched and tied to the tulip tree and thrashed within an inch of my life with the psychic news. You know, so now these conversations that, you know, I was certainly having along with Brian back in the 90s are still percolating and coming to the fore. But I think the difference is certainly with the centre back home in Victoria, which obviously Simone's been to, and the weeks that we did at the Arthur Finney College where we replicated the services. You know, what we did, and it's always worked for us, is that take away the reliance on the demonstration, so that the entire service is split equally between a demonstration of healing mediumship, a demonstration of speaking mediumship, and a demonstration of evidential mediumship. So that actually there is not that reliance on, well, let's get all of the adverts out of the way so we can get to the main event.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't that. The service is the main event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, I think one of the things is certainly in the UK, it would be wonderful to see people trying new things and experimenting, and breaking out of the mold of this is what a church service looks like.
I think the pandemic has started that. If there's anything positive to come out of it, it has to be that for me, because, you know, up until March last year, I mean, I wouldn't even do a phone reading, let alone do something online, and never would do anything, you know. And I've had to completely change the way I work and how I do things. But it's also brought out, I think, hopefully to a degree anyway, the best in me as well, because I can give more time to people, and also I can hear more of what they're saying, rather than when you're in a room with a lot of people and you've got to spread yourself evenly, and you can't be with one person for too long because you're ignoring the rest and so on, you know. And I just feel that there are certain things that the online work has given us that we have not had before, and we should be exploring and exploiting it to get the best out of ourselves, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we'll go back to the way it was, even when the pandemic sort of begins to
No, I
subside.
don't think we can.
Um,
No.
I think that's also a good thing. As
Mm,
you say, I think this technology has also given us the possibility to reach far more people than we could ever have thought
yeah.
possible, and also stretched us also as working exponents to recognize that we don't have to be in a different country to reach so many different people. And
Mm,
also it's also given those people who cannot get to a center or
right.
to the Arthur
Yeah.
Findlay College or any particular center
Yeah.
where they live. They don't have to, because they have the means to actually
Mm.
access this.
Yeah, we don't ever have to hear those words. There's nothing going on where I live. We
No,
don't ever have to hear those words again,
yes,
So, and that's amazing. But I was, and also, I mean, it must be hard for you being over in the UK for a year and missing your Canadian friends, if you like, and family, that they must have become now.
yeah, no, absolutely, because I mean, we do a Zoom meeting back home every Sunday for our community,
Mm,
and the thing is that I think we also will be looking at, well, not just we, but I think around the world, is that one of the positive things this has created, or the sense of a global outreach, a global community, so that you don't actually have to be in the
yeah,
same country to belong to a community.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so yes, I've been away. By the time I get back, it'll probably be 18 months. So yes,
Wow.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I only came over here for 2 weeks. That was the point.
Yeah, a lot's
As you said,
happened.
yeah, a lot happened in that time. So, but that's life. That's the way.
Yeah.
But but yes, it would be, as much as I've enjoyed being here, it will be nice to go home at some point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's your home. Yeah. So apart outside of your work for spirit and spiritualism, what do you enjoy doing? I know it's difficult at the moment because I know you've got other commitments, but
Yeah.
outside of that. Mm,
But I think that what I enjoy doing, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think I enjoy learning as much as anything. That can be anything. That can be with people. That can
yeah.
be on my own. That can be outdoors. That can be via a book, via um, a computer screen. I think one of the things that I really value is the ability to learn something new. Um, and one of the great things that this is what has happened to me over these last 12 months of being here, separate from my family back in Canada, has also given me the opportunity to meet new people via the computer. And I've struck up some really nice friendships with people that I would never have met anyway,
Right.
that have also challenged me to make me think also in different ways, because I think one of the great difficulties with this work is that we can get stuck in a rut of our own making, that
Mm,
we think in a certain way. And what I do enjoy greatly is being challenged, by people saying, "Well, Simon, I don't agree with that. Why do you think
yeah.
that?" Because, and to me that it makes me think, and anything that makes me think, whether it's a book, whether it's a person, whether it's a place,
Mm.
that's what I really enjoy.
I think for me you've hit the nail on the head, because I feel that the one aspect of spiritualism that's not identified often enough or confronted is the fact that we have a massive lack of debate and discussion. You know, we can talk about it amongst our friends, but when it comes to a group of people, and not people running it, but just sharing a debate, for me is and looking at different sides to an argument as well. That's what does it for me, in
Well,
every subject that I'm interested in.
no, exactly. And I think that's what, again, which is sad, because it's, spiritualism, certainly in its history had some really
A
brilliant
wonderful speakers.
thinkers,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that would challenge you.
Yeah.
And what we really need is to be able to go, well, actually, do you really believe this? Someone just use this as an example. This was at the college a few years ago on a week, and it was a teaching group that I had, and it was the usual thing that I'd asked the students to prepare something, and they were then I was assessing them on the presentation, and this one person had done something on the aura, and I said, well, so do you believe it? And he said, well, yeah, I think so. And I said, what do you mean you think so? So, well, do you believe all of that stuff? You know, all of the colors and egg-shaped thing around the body. Do you believe all that stuff? Well, that's what it is, isn't it? I said, no, it's not. Have you had the experience of that? Well, no, but the teacher that I went to told me this is what it looked like. I said, well, how do you know it's real? How do you even know whether that what you're doing is real? And the whole point of this work as well, if we're going to move it forward, and even the theories of spiritualism, is to challenge them, and think for yourself. Because if you're just teaching something that you've taken a course on the platform, or you've taken a course with somebody else, and go, well, but is that how you work? You know, I saw something recently, and again, I'm probably going to stir a hornet's nest up. You know, but you know, all of these things. You know, the dreaded 3 C's, which to me always sounds like a 60s mountain group.
Yeah.
You know, it's the clairvoyance, clairaudience, and then people, you know, bringing in clairgustians, clairaliens, you know, and it's like, it's all clairsentience. It's just all of it is clairsentience. Creating words for the sake of it. It's all sensory experience. At the end of the day, if you've not had that sensory experience, how on earth can you even teach it? Because, and this is the thing, because if we don't challenge the theories, we don't challenge them, how are we ever going to take this forward? And if you are, for those of you maybe teachers on here, you know, if you've not had the experience that you're teaching, you shouldn't be teaching it. No, not at all.
My favorite one on that is clair knowing, by the way. I just threw that one at you, you know. That's my favorite one. Like, that's a different one to all the others, of course, you know. So, you know, you're so right. You're absolutely so right. And I actually have a pet hate with the words, the 3 clairs. I always think it's like 3 eclairs, you know, like 3 cakes you get in a shop. You
know? I know. The thing is that, and again, one of the things is that, so you're if you're doing a workshop on the 3 clairs, is that how it, you know, is that how it works for you? Because if it doesn't, don't teach it.
Yeah. You know, and are we all absolutely certain how we get our information every second of it? Because I don't know that I am. No, 100%. No, not at all. Can be a combination of 10 things, not 3.
Well, you know, and as you said, lots of times, the problem with mediumistic development is that these theories do not explain the phenomena; they describe the phenomena. That's the difference. And so, you know, you cannot say categorically that this is how the medium is perceiving the information. And so why I'm saying to you about this is because we have to constantly challenge these ideas, so that if you are acting as a teacher, then you need to know how it first of all works for you before you can even begin to work with a student.
And also on that note, and I remember us having this discussion many years ago, that not every medium makes a good teacher.
Nope.
It's not a natural progression for everybody to go from mediumship to teaching.
Absolutely.
You know, some people just don't have that skill, you know, or and don't have that way of explaining themselves.
I think that's such a good point, Simone. And as you say, we've had this conversation before, because, you know, one of the things is when we came in, there was no understanding, and I certainly never thought I'd be a teacher.
Neither did
you know, and I remember Gordon Higginson was on that week, the teaching and lecturing week that we were on. Gordon Higginson walked past me. No, sorry, it was a Longton week. Someone and I were on that other week, but I was on Longton week where I went as a student, and Gordon Higginson walked past me, stood next to me, and he said, one day, this was in the library at the Arthur College, and he says, one day, he said, you will be up there and people will be clapping you. Well, I could have fell off the chair, because I hadn't even had any thought of teaching, never mind demonstrating or anything like that. And this is the problem, is that today people see it as Okay, what I'll do first is I'll develop my mediumship, so become a demonstrator. Then I'll probably do spirit art. I'll develop physical mediumship. That's next, and I'll just go through my list. And then I'll become.
You forgot the trance in there as well.
How could I forget the trance? Of course, the trance.
Yeah.
I forgot that one. And then I'll set up my own mentorship group.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, if you're going to develop your mediumship, if you want to have a goal, be the best medium that you can be. Not be a teacher, because that's not going to help your mediumship at all. And at the moment, we're seeing a lot of teaching where, and again, Simone and I have joked about this before, it's becoming the bland leading the bland, you know, because you get somebody who's been to a weekend workshop, they've heard it, they've listened maybe half the time, and then they make a flyer and they're teaching that workshop poorly the following weekend. You know,
and what's even harder for me is that when they are questioned by their students, they can't help them because they haven't had the experience.
Exactly.
You know, the thing is, at least we know that whatever we're teaching, we've had that experience. You know, I know what it's like to be absolutely dreadful at something, and I can get by on other things, you know, but it's understanding where my skills are, you know, and hopefully focusing on those that I haven't got, you know, to try and get to become more all-rounded, if you see what I mean. But it comes back to this word. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to offend a few people. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to say it. It comes back to this word gift, which I loathe and detest. That we are gifted, because if we're gifted, then it's like it's all done. We're presented with this present and there's nothing to work on. For me, it's a skill, not Absolutely. A gift.
Yep.
And I feel once we get that out of our spiritualist vocabulary, then we can start working on what really matters. But once people start to believe that they are gifted, then we've lost them.
Absolutely, because everybody is special.
Yeah.
Everybody is special.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, everybody is ordinary. We are ordinarily special. And the faculty of mediumship is no more a gift than being a good mother, a good father, a good son, or any of those things. You know, it's not. It just happens to be a quirk in your makeup. That's all it is. It's a twist in the soul, if you want to call it that, that enables you to dissociate the mind. That's it. Period. End of story. But it is not a gift that's doled out by a benevolent God. It just doesn't work that way. No. Because as soon as you call it a gift, it creates separation.
Yeah.
And mediumship is not about separation. Mediumship is about community and coming together and healing. Healing is always about coming together. Sorry, mediumship is always about coming together. It is not about separation. But as soon as you will use the word gift or special, it creates separation, it creates division.
Yeah, lost it. Yeah. So if you had a magic wand, I'm sorry to do this to you, but if you had a magic wand, what would your next step in spiritualism be?
These are good questions, Simone, aren't they?
I'm sorry.
No, they are. No, they're good ones. These are. I mean, I think what I would wish for spiritualism, because I think it's got such a rich history.
Yeah.
It changed the world, and I think this is one of the sad things that people forget, is that it literally changed the world. It was one of the driving forces in the 19th century for the social movements, you know, the abolition of slavery, women's emancipation, women's suffrage, all of these things, you know, the scientific revolution, it was the driving force behind many of those within mediumship. And I think for a magic wand, what I would like is for spiritualists to value their spiritualism. I think that's what I would wish for, to value what they have, because most religions don't survive past 200 years, new religions. Most of them die
Right.
on the vine. And so I would wish for those of us who call ourselves spiritualists to value greatly what we've got. I've just heard this morning that a big spiritualist church near to where I am here in the West Midlands has closed during the pandemic and won't be reopening.
Oh no.
Yeah, and this church is a big one.
Wow.
I served it when I began, and they had a community of spiritualists in the 19th century, and so I wish for all of you that class yourselves as spiritualists, or perhaps are on the spiritualist path, is to value where we've come from, but to also value where you are today, and to create a space and to leave a space so that those who come after us can have something still to value, and to cherish. That's what I would wish for.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I totally agree. And finally, I promise I will stop soon. But I just want to ask you, you know, something that you just said about history. If I had a magic wand and said you could meet anybody now, anybody, any pioneer or anyone in history, who would your choice be? I know that might be hard because you may have about 20 that you'd like to meet, but who would you like to have a discussion with?
That's a really good question.
I think if I just say that, I'll leave you to think for a second, because mine would be Robert Owen. Robert Owen would be the man for me, the one who, you know, printed his own money, formed the first creche, you know, made the first, you know, he educated the children of his village. And what saddened me when I went to New Lanark, which was Robert Owen's home, what really saddened me was to go to the home and there wasn't one spiritual book in his home. They'd removed all the books, and he was such a prolific writer, an amazing writer. So he's mine. He's the one that I would love, you know, I'd love to talk to, because he was the one that he must have gone through hell to get to do what he did, because at that time children were exploited to work on the land, up chimneys and all the rest of it. And he said, no, they must be educated first before they go to work. And you know, he was the one that made sure that, you know, he looked after his village. So he's the one I would think of. But what about you? How do you feel? Who would yours be?
I think one of the things what I would be really interested in meeting are some of the I'll grab a couple of pioneers if I can.
No, you don't. It doesn't have to be a pioneer. It doesn't have to be. No.
My background's in psychology, so I'm interested in the psychology of mediumship, and what I'm interested in is I would love to have met some of the protagonists of the Society for Psychical Research.
Oh, okay.
Why that is because I would be very interested in what their experience of when they sat with some of the mediums. One of the mediums, particularly Leonora Piper, was a brilliant medium, and she had a variety of different controls that worked with her. And the Society for Psychical Research, quite a number of protagonists sort of sat with her and interviewed her. And I would love to have actually spoken to them to got their interest and their opinion of what they thought was taking place when she was working. That's what I would have found. Edmund Gurney, Sidgwick, Arthur Balfour was part of that group, and also forms part of the cross correspondences many of you are familiar with, which really forms one of the best empirical evidences of survival of consciousness after death. I think those individuals I would have loved to have spoken to, and I think also what would be fun to find out, and I think this is the interest with the pioneers, and particularly when you read a lot of the pioneers' books, is and this is particularly the biographies of mediums such as Estelle Roberts, Helen Hughes, they only, well, not so much Helen Hughes, but Estelle Roberts in particular, they only tell you when it worked really well. And if that human, there would have been days where it didn't work well.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
what I'm more interested in is not how brilliant they were, but how they felt when the days when they weren't brilliant.
Or how they dug themselves out of that hole. Yeah, like we've done a few times.
Yeah, no, but that's it. I think because I think the sad thing is that we can look to a lot of the pioneers' memoirs and think that's what they were like all the time, and that's not true. And it gives us a false idea, particularly when we're working, as to, well, you know, I can never be wrong, I can never be bad. Well, mediumship is so ephemeral.
Oh, absolutely.
That it, you know, it doesn't always work the way we want it every time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's quite amazing. Yeah, I hadn't ever thought of it from that point of view, but I will now. Thank you. So just before we come to the end, I can't believe the time's gone so quickly. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask Simon? Anyone got anything they'd like to run past him?
Just as there's something in the chat box here.
Right. Okay. I don't want to do that. Somebody just made a comment. I think, isn't spiritualism based on test? Try the spirit to see if they are from God. God is within all of us. This is from Helena. And there's, I always want to say, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, mean to be disrespectful, but when I hear that line, I always want to see to test if it's from God or the power of one's own subconscious, because I think that does more damage than anything external, you know. Yolanda, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, good evening all.
Hi.
Lovely to see you, Simone, and you too, Simon. It's not really a question to Simon, but more in general. Because before you actually started to talk about the debates, I was thinking already, why don't we talk more and have discussion? Well, I don't like the word discussion, but have this communication with each other about thoughts. Because as I'm working on SNUi, I do believe there is not that many opportunities than only doing the platform work and the philosophy itself and healing. But I'm missing this kind of debates, to be honest. Is there something coming up, Simone?
I wouldn't know that, but I can say that, you know, Simon and I, because we've been around for, sorry, Simon, I'll talk about myself, because I've been around for so long, you know, I got used to discussion and debate, and it's a very personal thing as well, because some tutors feel quite uncomfortable with debates, and others like myself and Simon, we're quite comfortable with it, you know. So it's a question of you personally, and to do something personally, you know, like for instance, when I'm teaching a group, I sometimes, instead of having a demonstration of mediumship, I would prefer a debate, you know, and to see all aspects of a particular subject, and I would choose that subject for other people to debate, and not allow that subject to be themselves. Otherwise it can end up as a battle, you know, and you just don't want that, you know. You learn that the hard way, you know. But it's a personal thing, you see. Not, you know, if you put I'm ever so sorry, Yolanda, and I really do understand your question, but if I was to put on the program, you know, we're going to have a debate or a discussion, it's a bit like saying tonight we're going to discuss philosophy. You will not get many people come. That's unfortunately the fact.
Okay.
You know,
hopefully one day it will change.
Do it in a different way. What I'm saying is, you need to be, if you pardon the expression, but clever is how you present that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can say we do an evening of demonstration and put in the debate.
I don't know if you can get away with that, but I'll leave it with you. Okay.
Thanks, Simone.
But you could do it once, can you?
I'm just asking, it just
No,
maybe
I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
because you can see the philosophy. I heard many people say, I love the philosophy. So there is something changing within the years now. So maybe.
Well, all I know is from the Arthur Finney College's point of view, and I've been involved with, compiling that program for so many years. If you put a course on philosophy, unfortunately, it's the one that's the least attended. Even though all these people will say how much they love it, but when push comes to shove, they won't sign up for it.
Yeah, that's a pity.
That's the way it is.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you,
Simon. You're very welcome. Okay. Anybody else like to say something? Anyone else want to share a point of view?
Alyssa and Carolyn, I saw too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to follow up on what you said about a course. I've heard quite a few experienced mediums talking in the last few months. And what strikes me is that there seems to be a huge need before you start any other course to have a real awareness of personal development.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Who you are as a person, where you're at, why you're looking to come in to develop any form of mediumship. So if you put in courses together at the Arthur Finney College, would it be worth considering? Almost in Findhorn in Scotland, you have to have done a basic course before you can do any of their other courses. Could that not be something as a spiritualist organisation you could think about?
Well, I'm not in that position where I would be able to. I would not be able to explain that to the college. Although I do know that there are a lot more courses on personal development at the college. But you see, it's very much like this, and I'm sorry if this is direct, but I'm afraid that's my way. If you put a course up that says beginners, regardless of whether you've done anything or you've never done anything before, you won't get many people on it.
Well, but you see, I would challenge you there and say, how do you decide whether you were a beginner or? No,
that's what I'm saying. Obviously you would explain that in your write-up. What's a beginner? Somebody who's not experienced the power and blah, 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 or experienced mediumship or healing or whatever. But the thing is, that's the way it is. People today are always looking to the bigger picture before they get the basics, is what I'm saying to you. And I think you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, but what I'm also saying is, should you not actually be offering more of the basics before anyone accesses any of the other courses?
Yeah, well, we're trying to do that on SNUi, and that's all I can offer as chairman of SNUi. I'm not in a position to be able to do that with anyone else. Okay. All right. Caroline.
Yes. I'm going to come in a couple of things on what Yolanda was saying. The ELDC, they once a week, they are doing a discussion, but they limit it to a topic. Like
okay, that's good. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, they had, do you believe or do you know? And they have different topics pertaining to philosophy, but they don't call it philosophy. They put it as a question. And so it isn't just coming in and doing an hour of just open, chit chat and this is who I am, but it's actually a specific topic. But oftentimes questioned as a debate, stated as a debatable format, and it works very well. They have a chair who controls it, and people, will raise their hand, and there's some interesting discussions. It happens on a Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. And it's quite thought-provoking. And the other thing I wanted to say to Simon was thank you so much. You've been like a breath of fresh air, because this is where I come from primarily. Is it's been much more to do with my development. The last thing I actually wanted to be was a medium. It filled my brain with horror. Healing was something I've always done all my life. But anyway, long story short. But thank you. I think you've got a lot of very good ideas. And I think philosophy, yes, that word philosophy puts people off. But I think if you put down the word discussion, it's like Arthur's class on a Monday. You know, I always attend that, but it's not very many. It comes and goes. There's about 20 people currently, but because it says philosophy, I think if it talked, even if it said inspirational speaking, would be different. Or, you know, there was a lady who came on recently, and did a thing on doing a spiritual address. And she says, unless you're doing a pass, for example, there's very little classes online for learning about spiritual addresses. So yes, you can get it when you come to the Arthur Finney College. But I think, and what this last lady said, having an initial course to learn about the basics is not a bad idea.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll think about that for SNUi anyway. Okay, I can do that. All right.
Let me just quickly comment as well. I think one of the biggest issues with the word philosophy is because generally it's been so ghastly.
Yes.
Absolutely mind-bogglingly ghastly. You know, that in many, certainly in its latter form, in the early days, you know, there were some fantastic speakers, and it was valued so much. You would have a speaking medium and you would have a demonstrating medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it degenerated into, you know, some poor soul who was decent to give evidential mediumship, but then I got to come up with some fluff and puff just to pass 10 minutes, you know, which is just basically an insult to people's intelligence. Yeah. And I think the thing is why people are put off with philosophy is because, for generally speaking, the speaker has talked at the people instead of actually embracing and allowing the philosophy, which we have a very powerful and rich tradition of philosophical discussion, but also philosophy that underpins living and life in spiritualism. You know, we've had some really amazing speakers and really thought-provoking individuals that actually can speak to modern day issues. I mean, the Sanctuary produced a book, which I know that the college has got, and is on. Deborah Skelton at our Sanctuary wrote a book, Echoes, which we use a lot and we recommend for churches, because there's readings in there that have been just updated from all of our pioneers, but they're actually in modern English, but they're actually applicable to modern stuff, you know, modern issues. But until we actually get spiritualism away from its phenomena-driven obsession, and actually move it into the philosophical, back to its philosophical underpinnings, we will never be able to address this separation between, if you will, the outpouring of the Spirit and the people that it needs to touch. And it's a shame, because we do have this most amazing, very, very rich philosophical experience to offer people. It's just unfortunately not in a great place at the moment, but hopefully, you know, everyone on here can be a modern exponent of good philosophy, you know.
Okay, I think that I think everybody's had a say. I haven't left anybody out. So I just want to say thank you so much, Simon, for a lovely, lovely evening. It's refreshing. It's been so interesting, and I want to thank you so much for agreeing to come on with me this evening, and to thank everybody else for joining us too. And it's been lovely. Thank you so much indeed.